Hello everyone, and welcome to Let's Talk Heritage. Let's Talk Heritage is a series of video talks with heritage professionals throughout the Caribbean region. The objective of this series is to educate persons about cultural and natural heritage within the Caribbean region. It is also geared at educating persons about cultural events that would have taken place at heritage sites or heritage locations. Stay tuned and let's talk heritage.
Hi, good morning, Rudylynn.
Morning.
Hi, welcome to the initiative of Panavia Heritage. What we are doing here this morning, we are going to have a nice discussion about restoration and historical buildings and heritage buildings in Trinidad. So it's going to be an easy back and forth where we're going. So this is not an exam.
No.
Right? So we can have a nice time this morning.
Okay.
All right, so introduce yourself to the team and as what you're doing.
Okay. Well, I'm a restoration architect.
Right.
I've been working with old buildings, well, since I graduated from school in 1974 in Washington, D.C.
Okay.
I went to Howard University. And my love of the old buildings started when I was a child because my grandfather used to build these little gingerbread houses. He was a joiner and a contractor. And so I was so used to being around them that even when I graduated from school and came back home and I saw the state of the buildings in Trinidad, I felt sad because I felt that they were falling apart, nobody cared. So at that point, I started a group called Architects in Conservation.
Okay.
And basically to get together with other professionals to find out what can we do? How can we save these old buildings and for future generations, really?
Correct.
What happened was shortly after that, my friend Megan Brown, who is a prominent interior designer, she heard that the George Brown house was going to be demolished. And
well, help me as I'm a little younger than you.
Yes.
George Brown house was where?
George Brown house is at the corner of Victoria Avenue and Queen's Park West.
Okay,
You know where TGI Fridays is?
Right.
Okay, the black and white house right next to TGI Fridays across the street.
Right.
Now that house was built by an architect called George Brown.
Okay.
And George Brown was an architect who transformed most of downtown Port of Spain from timber structures to stone masonry and cast iron.
Well, you have taught me something already because today is the first time I've ever heard the name George Brown.
Now, George Brown, he was really important. So he's very important to the planning and redevelopment of downtown Port of Spain.
Okay.
So if you think about the buildings, that particularly the ones that are still there in the lower part of Frederick Street, you can recall when you think of, if you just imagine you're walking down that street and you look up, there's lots of cast iron.
Yes.
Right? The buildings have lantern lights. When I was a child, the cast iron columns came all the way down to the sidewalk.
Right.
And so Frederick Street, Shacon Street, Independence Square looked just like that. Even buildings like old Mayor Marshall building, and there's one Pizza Hut.
Yes.
On Independence Square, that's a George Brown building.
Oh,
right?
all right. Okay.
So he has a distinctive style. He introduced cast iron components into Trinidad, like cast iron fretwork, balustrading, columns, steel columns, decorative columns.
Yes.
That sort of thing, girders, beams. He also introduced wooden fretwork into Trinidad. He had a factory on Richmond Street that you could go there and out of a catalog you could buy lengths of fretwork, transom windows, which are the panels above the doors to allow for fixed ventilation in the house. You could buy doors, windows and things like that already prefabricated. He was the first person to do that. So what happened after George Brown is that Port of Spain began to be transformed, and all the houses in Woodbrook, in Victoria Square, Belmont and whatnot started to take on this gingerbread look.
Okay.
Okay, so that house that I was telling you about, to just go back, he designed that house for his daughter.
Okay.
And it was the only building that was left that we felt that he had a personal interest in. All the other buildings were done for clients. This he did for his family. So we felt that this was a legacy that we needed to keep. So Megan called me, I called the other architects, and about 12 of us just went down to the house by the savannah and decided we were going to stop the bulldozers. We talked to the man, he wouldn't stop, whatever, so we stood up in front of the bulldozer. We stood up in front of the house, we stood in front of the bulldozer, and we decided all you have to come through us, we're not moving. Well, of course, the man was a little bit taken aback because nothing like this had ever happened before in Trinidad. But it resulted in, over the next 3 days, a crowd of maybe about 200 people or more.
Okay.
People who supported the cause, who were also concerned and felt that this building should be saved. And so we met with the Minister of Planning, who agreed with us eventually when we presented our case, and we saved the building.
What year was this?
1982.
Okay,
it's a while back.
Yeah, not too long ago, just a couple of years.
But what happened was right there at the savannah, Citizens for Conservation was formed.
Okay, all right, excellent.
So everybody who was in the protest got together, we got together in the savannah, and we had a little meeting, and we said, look, we can't be doing this for every old building.
Correct.
We need a law that will protect the heritage sites.
And there needs to be some sort of system and process.
Exactly. Right. So we formed Citizens for Conservation.
Okay.
And that was the mandate of Citizens for Conservation, to have a national heritage trust established with laws to protect our heritage buildings.
Those other citizens, as your organization, they're only limited to homes or on houses?
No.
Forts,
historic
and all
sites,
those things?
built heritage,
okay,
man-made heritage.
Okay.
So it will include things like statues and pictures, paintings, jewelry, anything that man makes, under these things that are under the sea, wrecks, all of that comes under the National Trust.
Okay, excellent.
Yeah.
You see, well, again, that's why, because I was just wondering, would it only include like buildings and all those things? But I'm glad that you informed me of that.
It also will include places like the Queen's Park Savannah, or places of natural beauty would also be part of that, because they would be considered historic sites as well.
Okay, excellent.
Yeah.
So one of the main focus that you will have is the Magnificent Seven that we have brilliantly around the savannah.
Well, yes, because again, the Magnificent Seven buildings, particularly for people who grew up in Port of Spain, that is part of our personality.
Yes,
Let's put it just put it that way. These are buildings that we connect with. That anywhere in the world we would see other buildings and we would think, oh, that looks just like so and so, and that looks like this other building. And we have a connection with the Magnificent Seven, which is why, as the buildings deteriorated over the years, people were so saddened. Everybody was upset. Everybody couldn't understand why, what has happened to the buildings. Look at them, they're in a state. And when I was a child, even up to 30 years ago, 20 years ago, whenever tourists came, there would be a long line of maxis and taxis driving slowly around the savannah, and everybody looking at the buildings and people taking pictures and stuff. And for the small tourist industry that we had and still have, this was a big deal for the tour operators. This was some place that they could take people and be proud to show them that these are our buildings.
Yes.
And the reason that we have to be proud is because we built these buildings.
Yes, yes.
Our hands, our ancestors, our family quarried all that stone from Lavantil. Our people did it. We built them.
This is a history lesson they give this morning?
Yes, it's a history lesson. So we can't just talk about them as being old buildings. We have to respect the craftsmen. We have to respect the laborers that did these buildings and understand how much they contributed to life in Trinidad. Because what happens is these same laborers, contractors, joiners, artisans, they then went out into their communities and built miniatures of these historic buildings. So if you drive through Belmont, if you go through Victoria Square, even as you go into the country areas, Sandy Grande, down south, you will see these gingerbread houses popping up all over the place.
Yes, yes.
And it's because of George Brown and his introducing this style into Trinidad, and it's because of them aspiring to a quality of house and a design of house that the great estates had, and what you see in the bigger houses in Port of Spain.
Okay, but as we're going down this road, what are the plans? Okay, how do I initiate that a building is deemed a structure or an item is deemed historical, and what are the plans in maintaining and keeping that growth happen?
Well, determining if a structure is historical falls to the National Trust. Okay, they do have a set of guidelines. The National Trust Act clearly outlines what are the qualifications for a historic site. So there are several guidelines. There are about 10 or 12 things that the building must qualify under in order to be deemed historic.
So my grandfather, home that is 80 years, I can't stand up and say that is a historical site.
No, but what you can do, if in your heart you feel this is a building that you want, that should be kept, and that you feel it's significant, you just contact the trust, and somebody will come and have a look at it. And then we will, we look at it and we will tell you, and you will tell us, because it may be historic from a social point of view. It may be that some good meeting happened there, that somebody was born there, that it doesn't have to just be for the aesthetics of the building. It is also how that building has contributed to community, how it has contributed to the development of life in Trinidad. So you would have buildings that may not look too fancy, but somebody important was born there, somebody that contributed towards social development or otherwise in Trinidad.
So based on what you're saying, Woodford Square is deemed because
Woodford Square is deemed a historic district. That's already been approved by Cabinet.
Okay, because of, you hear all the history of, they used to call it the University of Woodford Square.
That's right. So all of that, including all the historic buildings that are around it, that makes that area very important to Trinidad.
Okay, so what are the plans that we are doing to?
Well, the National Trust has gone through a lot of research, and they've listed quite a few buildings. I don't know how many, can't remember right off the top
That's
of my head.
fine.
It's about 30 something buildings, I think. But, and those buildings are eligible for protection under the law, right? So whereas in the past, there was no control over buildings that were demolished, for instance. You're not allowed to demolish a building that is deemed historic by the National Trust, or that is on the official list for protection. There are two lists, There's a list that talks about properties of interest, which your grandfather's house, my grandmother's place, all these kinds of buildings are on that list. And from that list, the National Trust then takes a few names at a time as they can, because they have limited resources, and they will do the research and justify the historicity and the value to the nation of each structure. And once they do that, then that's presented to Cabinet, and Cabinet will then say yes or no, this building can be deemed a heritage property.
So based on what you said there, you said in the past there weren't policies and guidelines, and a lot of our historical sites were destroyed.
That's right.
What has happened or is happening now to either lessen or make sure that never happens again?
Well, of course, the National Trust Act, we have a National Trust Act now. We have a National Trust Council, and we have Citizens for Conservation still in the background, even though our initial mandate was to set up the trust. Having done that, we stepped back and to allow the trust to do its work. But we are still in the background, sort of looking on, and still lobbying quietly. When we see anything that's not going right, we will lobby, and we will talk to people and try to get things turned around, and we work alongside the trust. So it's all part of, we believe strongly in education. One of the things we like to do is we like to keep talking to people and trying to educate the younger ones to make them understand why these buildings are important. And so we've taken that mantle on.
Okay, very good,
right?
very good. Because education is very key to it, because again, as I told you, you taught me a name this morning that I'm being honest, I never heard before.
Yes.
This until we just started speaking.
Right. Well, one of the things that we're lobbying for right now is to encourage the proper maintenance of these structures.
Right, correct.
This is really important, and because what has happened in the past is that, for instance, take Whitehall. Okay? Whitehall was completely restored, 20 odd years ago, and it wasn't maintained.
Yeah, which forced even the office to move to another building.
That's right.
Because of
and the building just fell apart again. People have to understand that you can't just repair an old building and just leave it like that and expect it to take care of itself.
Correct.
It can't.
Correct.
You have to remember that most of these buildings were built in the days when labor was very inexpensive.
Yes.
So it wasn't a problem maintaining the building. But now it's a little bit different. So you now have to make an effort. You have to make a plan. You have to know what you're doing. So you have to, when you restore a building, you have to come up with a maintenance program.
Yes.
You have to know, many of them are now air conditioned. We didn't have that before.
Correct.
Okay? All right. So you need to come up with a maintenance program for each of these buildings that allows the building to survive, that allows the building to work and to generate its own income, because you need to use the building to generate income, and the income you generate from the building pays for the maintenance. And so if you get the whole thing done properly and you think the whole thing out properly, the buildings could be here another 50, 100 years, taking care of themselves. We don't have to go cap in hand to the government every time something goes wrong and you need to fix something, because you have allowed the building to generate the income it needs to survive and to be maintained.
And I agree fully, because we have locals here who will leave to go England and see Big Ben. They will leave to go Washington and see the White House. So we need to encourage that sort of enthusiasm to see these historical
make
sites.
no mistake, Trinidadians are very happy about these magnificent 7 buildings. They want to go in the castle, they want to go and visit this one. People call all the time.
Yeah,
they want
okay,
to do
good,
these
very
things.
good, very good. I'm happy to hear that.
So while you restore the building, you have to put them to a use that allows the public to have some access to
Yes, yes.
and then you have to also put it to a use that generates income for the maintenance of the property.
You don't think that will lift the pride also?
It will lift of course.
Because the savannah it feels different with these buildings recently being restored.
People, we're getting hundreds of calls all the time, people texting us, whatever, they're so happy to see the buildings fixed up again, and they feel proud.
I am happy to hear that. Okay.
Yes.
So before we wrap up,
Yes.
I know in April, tell us what good news we have coming up in April of this year. I know we have a magnificent workshop coming up, but you tell me.
Well, the workshop is going to talk about maintenance of heritage properties.
Right.
It's going to talk about why we should maintain them. It's going to talk about the value to heritage tourism, the value to the public, the value to education of keeping and maintaining these old properties. And it's an effort to try and get people to understand that these are valuable properties. They are like our grandparents, and you have to take care of them.
You call like historical jigsaw pieces, where it tells us who we were and where we came from. And all those things.
Exactly. And there's some people who feel, well, it's old thing, you discard it, but it doesn't work that way. If you have an antique piece of furniture, you take care of it. If you have an old photograph, you take care of it. In the same way you have the old buildings, you take care of them, because they are works of art.
Yes, yes.
If you just look at any of them, just look at this one, you see all the little detailing and things on the building that you don't see in the contemporary buildings.
Correct.
That will be lost if we just let all of them fall down, and then the future generations have no reference. And while some of the buildings have been constructed in colonial days, and we went through a period of Massa Day done.
Right, right.
The point is we built them
Yes.
with our hands.
Correct. Correct.
So these are our buildings.
Yes, and we need.
It
Yes.
doesn't matter who living in it.
Yes, yes,
We built it.
yes.
And we need to be proud.
Certainly.
Absolutely.
Rudylynn, thank you very, very much. I wish I could have had pen and paper to start a write to,
Oh, that's all right.
to get info. Come to the workshop.
Come to the workshop.
Okay, I certainly will. So thank you very much. And this was Rudylynn. Let's discuss restoration.